Now, do you think Kickstarter and the concept of that, the crowdfunding, how much can that scale up? And we've seen, projects, generate millions of dollars of success. How big can that go? I mean, do you think they're going to be $10 or $20 million Kickstarters for big blockbuster games, or is it really more in this sort of, $3 to $4 million range?
Ask us at the end of the year. I think the success.
Marcus question.
15 years XPR. The success to fail ratio is going to be key. Yeah. I mean, if we're looking at 4 of every 5 Kickstarters making it, and delivering in this time frame or thereabouts, and delivering the good quality product, because we know Tim Schafer will deliver something good. I am hoping to hell that the Shadowrun game is good. Then we can look to up the ante, and people will be more prepared.
And my hope is that some of these, if they do well, I'm sure there will be publishers and other folks that will look at them and say, like, all right, this raised a bunch of money on Kickstarter, was very successful, people liked it, then let's take it to the next level. Let's give them some money to build a much bigger game potentially.
Sure. Well, there's a dark side to this. Right. Now that I'm needing to look for the dark side of this. But the worry that I have about it is like anything else. If you do overly aggressive focus testing in the game business, what you get back from gamers who are totally honest and really well informed, and it probably is to the detriment of consumer testing in games that gamers are so well informed. They're not like any other consumers. And one of the things that we discovered trying to figure out what to do with Xbox at Microsoft was all the Microsoft, sort of customer research guys were just stunned at how passionate and well-informed gamers were versus any other customer they had. Right? Yeah. And that's a great strength. The problem is that if you do start having a scorecard on Kickstarter or with crowdfunding sources, what ends up happening is people tend to want the same kind of thing they already had. Yeah. And so you end up, to some extent, with now a revolutionized version of the same exact problem, which is that you can only get funding for a game that is like another game, or a game that is like the other games you have made as a developer. So let's say that Tim and Double Fine deliver on this game, really well, and then Tim wants to do a crazy, totally different sort of a game. Will consumers decide that it's worth taking a flyer on that, or are they going to want something, that's more down the middle? When Tim made his pitch, a lot of the reason I think that people felt really comfortable was he said, I'm going to do the kind of game that you all love and that I've done really well with before, and I'm going to do a kind of game that doesn't exist right now. So it was, sort of a perfect moment. Not that it wasn't difficult.
And he was vague. Which is a big plus for him in the sense that you can
they trust him.
Yeah, and he's Tim, and one of the things about Tim that's great is that he's just a really honest person, and he will engage any customer, and they can give him crap. I've been with him when people have told him that they didn't like, Brutal Legend, and what were you thinking? And he'll say, yeah, well, we thought this and this and then this, and that's the critical thing here. If you're full of it in any way, online or with these customers, you will be slain.
And you're talking about scaling. I imagine a few years ago when Infinity Ward was having its big legal separation, if they had come out and said, if Kickstarter had been a thing then, and they'd come out and said, hey, our next project, we wanted to come directly to you. And
well, you look at the number of people they're donating for these things. I mean, they're raising millions of dollars, but it's, the number of, like, Double Fine, I think, is what, like 70, 80,000 people? I mean, it's not that there are hundreds or even millions.
Well, also remember, and this is something also that's a little bit concerning, is that the Double Fine game, the games that they've released, and a lot of the Kickstarter games that are getting released are based on technology that was developed in big console projects, or technology was developed, by other engine makers, right? That is funded a totally different way, and those engines get a little bit longer in the tooth. Kickstarter is a terrible way to get infrastructure investment. Kickstarter is not going to make new releases of Maya and all that kind of stuff, and that investment needs to come from somewhere as well. And we'll see how the pieces actually come together.
I think the interesting thing is that everybody says, Infinity Ward, Bungie would make a truckload of money to kickstart their next great shooter or whatever it's going to be. That shooter is then only going to come out on the PC. I mean, how much more money are they going to need to convert it to Xbox, to PS3? I mean, obviously there is a lot of similarities between Xbox and PC. But I mean, we are talking about products right now that are mobile or iPad or PC. And that's the thing. We're not talking about games that are going to go out and grab the console crowd by the old curlies and say, I want to get this, I'm going to go buy a PC. It's like the same conversation we had last week with Steam and the Steam box. Can you see somebody wanting to make 30, 40 million for donate 30, 40 million for a PC game? And how much more are they going to take it to Xbox? And how does that work with Microsoft?
But I feel like
there's
there
a whole, there's a nebulous amount of
some
stuff.
games now. I think what we've seen with a lot of these, indie games now, and with a lot of these games and Kickstarters, maybe there is this nice middle market that's developing. That every game doesn't have to be a big console game, and you can be pretty successful.
The ugly truth underneath it is that a lot of games that get a lot of press that talking heads like us discuss a lot, maybe aren't making that much money.
Right.
And that's really the ugly truth of this, is that there is stuff that garners a lot of buzz, and it's similar to social media. Why the big companies pull out of advertising on social media is that you can have a huge amount of buzz and popular and get awards at game developer conferences, and it still doesn't mean it's made any money. And when it comes down to it, really that's the fundamental problem. And I think that the industry searches around for this, and there are all of these different influences with platforms and the way that funds get raised and the ways that things invest, but we're still searching around for that way that you can allow people who have great ideas for games to make those games. It's hard.
But Kickstarter is at least a way to support some of the ideas they have, I guess, right? Because
I hope that my optimistic
I do
path
too,
is right,
believe me.
Because
and they're not making, one important thing with all these Kickstarters was, they're raising the money to build the game, and then the profits may eventually come after that.
And the strong belief that I've developed over the years is that the new world of mobile devices and these kinds of small games that we have, the really creative small games, are increasing the personal relationship between the game developers and the customers in a way that's really reminiscent of the arcade era, when the relationship between the customer and the game was totally direct. There's no middleman there at all, and it's an avid meritocracy, where people who make things that other people want to play are rewarded. And if that model gets extended to the speculative funding of those games, then that's fantastic, and an economy will shake itself out. The question is what that economy is going to look like, and I think that the genie's out of the bottle now. I don't think anybody can control that anymore. I don't think anybody can exert pressure on it in a big enough way to change it. And in fact, when companies come in and try to exert pressure on it, they get such negative social back pressure that they get kind of popped out of the market.
I don't want to be, obviously everybody's optimistic, and I want to say I want these to do well. I want there to be a minimal failure rate. I want everything to succeed. And ideally, it'd be great that in 12 months' time, or 2 years' time, we're talking about another Walking Dead coming out of Kickstarter. Because, that was the template on how to do, independent, episodic. They nailed it, and they were justly rewarded at the end of the year by so many people.
We can have a whole Kickstarter-based economy, guys. Anything's possible.
To pay for the next episode of Bonus Round.
Yeah.
I wonder what, I remember seeing, was it in the 90s or maybe it was in the early parts of the last decade, there was somebody who'd done a study, one of these, Michael Pachter-like people.
We miss you, Pachter.
We miss you, Pac. Had done a study of the failure rate of games. Games that had received funding and then stopped. And it was easier then because there were a smaller number of people financing games. But an interesting thing to put up on crowdfunding sites would be the average failure rate in this industry for projects that you might invest in. And I games it was like 60-something%.
Oh wow.
It was well. Again, it's hard to make a game, and a lot of times, how many times have you ever heard an elevator pitch for a game that sounds fabulous?
Yep.
And then somebody goes and implements it, and it's actually, this isn't fun at all. This is totally terrible.
I just came up with a almost like a rating system that basically goes on one side you got a caricature of Gabe Newell for the good, and on the other side you got a caricature of Bobby Kotick, and it basically goes between the two as to how happy you are with your thing. So sorry, my mind wandered.
And it's Kotick, by the way.
Kotick. I'm British. I say we invented the language.
All right, well, next time on the bonus round, we're going to turn to the established players and what they're going to do in 2013. Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. See you next Sunday.
See this and other GT shows and game reviews on the GT Originals iOS app, available now on the App Store.